Welcome into PEC Match Point, your premier destination for all the news and scores and highlights around the PEC. We've got a packed show today. We're nearly a third of the way through the fall season. I cannot wait to see what happened last week, what we got coming up. We've got some bold predictions as well. We're going to teach you everything you need to know about PEC Rocket League. We've got an absolutely jam-packed show for the premier FPS esports league in the country. As I said, we're going to go around the PEC. What happened last week? What are the scores you need to know? Lots of blowouts, but there was some nuggets in there that we're going to focus in on. Make sure you hear who's on top of what. Carson Cass is going to join us, absolute front of the program. He's going to give us our power rankings across the league. And some of them might kind of shock you. Maybe a little bit of a homer. We'll have to see what Carson has in store. Again, as I said, we go inside the PEC, Rocket League style this time. 3 excellent casters joining me, and they're going to make you smarter about everything you need to know Rocket League style. What's their game of the year? Who's in the national championship? And we'll wrap up the show with a look ahead to week 4. Again, there are some marquee matchups that you want to know. That's all coming up on PEC Match Point. Again, big shout out to the Idaho Air National Guard bringing this all to us as we start off in Rocket League, where there was an absolute massive one at the top of the standings, and that is Boise State and Michigan State. That is a rematch of last year's national championship. Boise State came in. They dropped game number 1, by the way. Looked like that might be a Spartan series, and then Boise State rattled off 3 in a row. Big shout out to Woozy. 8 goals and 11 saves. Opbomb put in 13 demos, but it wasn't enough. Boise State claims that series 3-1. Ohio State, they move on as they sweep Nebraska 3-0. The Cornhuskers looking for that first win still. This series was incredibly tight, by the way. Despite it being a sweep, every game was decided by just 1 goal. Every single Buckeye put in at least 3 in the series. Absolute massive team effort, and Bungo had a great defensive series for Ohio State, 6 saves as well. Creed RL for Nebraska, big shout out for him. He led the team with 4 goals, but it wasn't quite enough. Baylor, they made another fantastic move here as well. They took down Kansas 3-0, sweeping their Big 12 rival. They held the Jayhawks to just 3 total goals in that series. Hoxer was incredibly efficient, 4 goals on just 6 shots to go along with 5 saves. And Meave, he had 10 saves along with 2 goals for Kansas to try and keep that series close throughout. And finally, Syracuse doing a great job. They took down Utah as this was a crazy high-scoring game, by the way. We saw Boise State, Syracuse last a few weeks ago, a defensive series. No, the Orange put 32 goals in net. Final scores of the series, 6-2, 10-2, 7-6. That Orange offense has absolutely figured things out. Now we go over to Overwatch. This is where there's a lot of movement across the league right now. As we see week 3 Overwatch on the screen here. Saw kind of this big 3 power emerge at the top of the standings. Again, Boise State on a bye. They're the defending national champs. We'll talk about them later on in the show. But Kansas jumped all over Baylor with a 3-0 sweep. They move now to 2-0. The Jayhawks have only dropped 1 map this entire season, by the way. Absolutely incredible. Syracuse showed that their win over Boise State was no fluke as they took down Utah 3-1. Teddy Paya put in 49 kills for Utah, by the way, but it wasn't enough. The Orange had 2 players who put in some incredible score lines. Matt Clubb and Azer both doing very well as they pushed the Orange to their 2nd straight victory. And Ohio State took care of Nebraska in a 3-0. And I want to give a big shout out to Mafia. This scoreline is insane, by the way. 82, 1, and 2. Yes, you heard me right. 2 deaths in the entire 3-game series, including an absolutely perfect 29-0 in Game 3. Let's see what some of that sounded like from the Ohio Esports Twitch.
Is going to go down the Ramatra ult. The beat drop, and Genji Lau with that Ryuji skin is going to be in the back line.
Yeah, and that beat drop was enough to save Lau as he was a little bit in, but now he's
Jax
just going to cut down Jax.
Mafia zapping around.
He was finally going to get Lau, but Mafia is going to trade out
let
Ashley.
loose the ult right before they die, but it's just not enough. Ramatra can't do enough DPS right now. The
82 kills. Last week, I think some Buckeyes had 70. That team is absolutely putting up huge numbers. In Valorant, much like in Rocket League, we had a massive series between Boise State and Michigan State. We'll get to that one, though, as we start off with Ohio State, who last week we had our panel on Inside the PEC say Ohio State was a top 3 or higher school. They proved that panel knew what they were talking about. They handled Nebraska with a 2-0 win. Des put up a 41-15 scoreline in the series, and the Buckeyes were simply too much to handle. Gowdy XO did drop 22 kills for Nebraska, but it wasn't quite enough for the Cornhuskers. Kansas and Baylor had an absolute firefight of a 2-0 series as the Jayhawks win, but eliminations were all over the place. Cartface and Truth Messenger both put in over 50 kills in this series. absolute crazy that Kansas was able to win that one in a sweep. Utah took down Syracuse 2-0 as the Utes were able to get back to 500. Superman had 49 eliminations as it was just enough to hold off Syracuse, who had 3 players all go over 30 kills in this game. A great team effort, but it wasn't quite enough. And as I said, the big matchup, everybody had this circled. Boise State and Michigan State, them along with Ohio State, kind of that top 3 we heard about from our panel last week. Boise State jumped all over the Spartans early. Skies had 22 kills on Lotus to put the Broncos up 1-0. And it came down to a do-or-die game on Abyss for Michigan State. And we'll see if they were able to prevent the sweep or if the Broncos got the job done.
I'm godzooked right now. I'm flabbergasted. Boise State, have they lost a round since we started watching?
No.
Vise versus Vise fight comes through, and the Clutch King already showing his mettle. State players are gonna walk straight into the Venus flytrap, and they go, but how does Skies do that? T1 Skelesis, it's about to happen, catches him. He would have been chopped chicken, but he still is. Still is. I might see everything if he doesn't go too wide. Oh my gosh, please peek. He sees them all. Could be deceiving if they go in too fast. Slouch gets Skelesis. Dimensional Drift is clearing Masters out backside. Gets the first illogical one though. Out through heaven. And the Clutch Master. Look at this scoreboard. Everyone is over a 2-point KD in this game, by the way. Strong towards sight, and he gets it! Hold on, everybody. 11-9 now. Drift is coming through illogical. Ready, but not ready enough. These rounds are getting crazy. Someone might not know. Master, ooh, what a shot. Beautiful headshot with that Guardian. Doesn't hit it, Shorty in hand. Gets it, but Master confirms the game. Boise State win. That was insane. What a last
later
round.
rounds were gonna...
Absolutely massive win for Boise State. And as we went over to Smash, the sweep trend continued. It was a lot of sweeps here in week 3 of the PEC, but that didn't mean there weren't some exciting matches. We saw Michigan State. They won over Boise State 2-0. Match 1 only separated by 2 stocks. A massive 4-0 from Drewish kind of pushed the Spartans ahead, and they never looked back. Nebraska, they joined their Big Ten rivals Michigan State and remaining undefeated. They took down Ohio State 2-0. But this series even closer. We had to go to a tiebreaker set where Smoothie delivered a 4-2 win to clutch out the series for Nebraska. And finally, it didn't get any easier. Kansas, they got that 2-over sweep over Baylor. It didn't matter. After they won match 1 16-6, the second set between these 2 Big 12 schools had to go to a tiebreaker where Raisin Loaf was able to finish off the Bears.
See who wins this. What's at stake here? KU could win this game and win the entire set 2-0, or Baylor could put themselves on the board 1-1 and force a game 3, which would be their first game win all season, if I believe so.
That is true.
But right now we're seeing Raisin Loaf, one of our stronger players, on his main this time, not the Little Mac, in full force here, dedicated to not letting that happen. Do it, but at 96%, Raisin Loaf is in a really good spot to pull away with a dominant lead right now. It's just a question of whether or not they can do it, or whether or not Calamity is going to claw their way back into the game.
Oh, gonna see the blue. Maybe we can get a throw.
Here we go. We see blue and purple on deck. Both will kill, just in different ways. Now purple is the one selected. Grab is likely coming up soon.
Double
Purples
purple.
are both out. So you really have options here if you're raising them. That back air is one of many options. Just going to take the stock at 1-2. Now again, Raisin Loaf in a great spot to just keep this string going with the double purple Pikmin up smash, the double purple people eater. Harry Bogard getting eaten up right up by those right now. 70%.
Oh!
And the tech chase F smash is going to take it. Raisin Loaf wins it for KU.
Big shout out to our friends at Kansas Esports for that call. Absolutely electric. Just because they were sweeps across the board doesn't mean some of these matches were incredibly intense. You do not want to miss a week here in the PEC. Now it's time that friend of the program, Carson Cass, joins us. He was here last week talking about all things Valorant, and now he wants to make us smarter about every single game. He's got his power rankings ready to go, and I cannot wait to see where he has some of these teams ranked. I bet you he was very spicy last week on Valorant. I bet you he's going to have some crazy ones. So, Carson, thanks for joining us, man. And what are we looking at for the power rankings here in the PEC after week 3?
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm Carson Cass, as previously mentioned, caster from Syracuse University. If you don't know me, I was on the show last week with Valorant. Let's just jump into these power rankings. For Rocket League, I mean, you're talking about the bottom, University of Minnesota, 0-2, not much to speak of for them. Above them, Nebraska. They play Minnesota next week. They just went down one of the power rankings after a 3-0 loss to Ohio State. Ohio State at that 7th spot in the power rankings, 2-1. Win against Nebraska doesn't mean much to me. Next week they go on and play Syracuse. I expect them to be 2-2 and maybe 2-6 by the end of the semester. They have an easier schedule in terms of Rocket League for them, and at 2-1 right now, I don't expect them to improve. Utah at 6 just lost 3-0 to Syracuse, a dominant fashion from Lesser Tiz and Gababy. I expect them to move on and get better. Utah 1-1 will play KU this week, and it's a pretty important match. KU I have at 5 after their loss 3-0 against Baylor, but 1-2 right now. I don't think that loss is that big, because Baylor's a tough team to beat, but also, despite losing 3-0, Baylor didn't put up that many goals. They didn't score more than 4 in a single appearance. They never beat KU by more than 3 goals. That's not what I expect from Hawks Hernandy and a professional team, essentially. They're 3-0 right now, but I keep them at 4 for this reason. 3 will be Syracuse, 1-2, just beat up on Utah, and I expect them to get better next week. Boise State and Michigan State played last week. They won 3-1. The Boise State Broncos still the team to beat. Doc Haskell, his machine keeps churning, as I always say. And next week, it'll be actually the overall power rankings: Boise, Michigan State, SU, BU, KU, Utah, Ohio State, Nebraska, and University of Minnesota, 1-9. Next week, Nebraska plays Minnesota, which will be important if you are looking for the MAC, I guess, of Rocket League. Boise State and Baylor play, which will be a very fun match. It's Baylor's first real match, I think. Kansas University will play Utah, which is another one, but I think Ohio State as well will be playing Syracuse. I would recommend checking out Boise State versus Baylor, as well as Ohio State versus Syracuse. For Overwatch, at the bottom we have Nebraska, who just lost 3-0 to Ohio State. Don't expect them to be too far into this. Baylor 1-2. They just lost to KU. I have them at 7 for that reason. Minnesota 1-0, but on a second bye of the season. Kind of a tougher look right now because there's no real matches to really talk too much about. They beat Ohio State earlier. Utah 0-2 after their loss to Syracuse. Not where I think we expected this team. Have them at the 5 spot. I moved Kansas over them after their 3-0 win versus Baylor. Ohio State sits in the 3 spot, 2-0. King Donut is leading a very tough squad right now to beat Boise State 0-1. They had a bye this week, still lost to Syracuse last week. No reason to move them up or down. Syracuse 2-0 after a 3-1 win versus Utah, and Boise State in these two losses, they're 2 wins, they're 2-0, and I expect them to get better. Overall, SU keeps rolling. KU beats Baylor, and I think next week you should turn into Syracuse versus Ohio State. Those might be the best 2 teams in the PEC right now, and KU versus Utah will be a fun one as well. And Minnesota versus Nebraska will be a fun one to see just where Minnesota is and who they are. For Valorant, I'll talk a little about that. Nebraska at the bottom right here. Syracuse will be right behind them. Both squads 0-2. Nothing really to speak of for them. 7 will be Baylor, despite Truth being very good. I just don't have them in much of a spot, as Kansas beat Baylor 2-0 last week, and it was a closer match, but I think Kansas is just a better team overall, which is why I have them at the 6th spot. Utah I have above them. Kansas and Utah will play, of course, in every game this week. They won a 2-0 game against Syracuse, but I don't think beating Syracuse means much in terms of how good a team might be. They did play very close to Syracuse, and that's why I have them kind of down at this 5 spot, but they did play really well. Superman looks very good, and that's something to note. Minnesota on a bye, I have them at 4. They're very good right now. Michigan State I have at 3, because I just can't put them over Ohio State and Boise. Boise is my number 1. They just beat MSU 2-0. Ohio State is my number 2 after beating Nebraska 2-0. They both look really good. I expect more out of these 2 teams. Overall next week, I'd say you better watch KU versus Utah. That's going to be one of the better Valorant games next week, but overall, not much to really watch for. Otherwise, in Smash, let's go talk a little bit about that. Baylor at the bottom, 0-3 right now. Ohio State I put above them after their loss to Nebraska. KU at 6 with a 1-2 record. Boise State will sit at 5. They're 0-2, but I expect them to potentially move up as they play this week against Baylor. Nebraska at the 4 spot. They might be 3-0, but I just think this Minnesota squad is better. They're at 3. They had a bye last week. They're 2-0, and it's 1-1 for Syracuse, who had a bye this week. It says 2-1 on the website. That's not true. Michigan State at the 1 seed. It's 2-0 for them. I just think they're one of the best schools right now. They beat Boise State this week, beat Syracuse last week, who I have as my perennial number 2 because of Syrup. Palatino, watch out for that on the Michigan State side. But overall, I'd watch Nebraska-Minnesota for this game next week. It's a really good game, and I think it's going to decide who might be that 3rd-place finisher, who might even be 2nd come Las Vegas. I've been Carson Cass. Thank you very much. And back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Carson. Good to have you on, as always. Can't wait. He highlighted some very big matchups. Let's take a look at what we got because we still got a jam-packed show here on PEC Match Point because we've got, again, we saw Carson last week talking about Valorant. We're going to do the exact same thing. It's inside the PEC. We've got 3 talented casters. They're going to give you everything you need to know about Rocket League. You do not want to miss this. Some spicy predictions, some players to watch. Cannot wait to hear from that. And Carson just did it, but we'll do our own look ahead to week number 4. What are the matchups to watch? What do the standings look like? Again, we're almost a third of the way through the fall semester already. Time is flying here on the PEC. There's more coming up. Don't go anywhere. PEC Match Point will be right back after this.
It's the end of a good day's work in Idaho. Time to punch out. Time to check in and catch up. Time to remind ourselves that what we work for isn't a paycheck. It's to make the good things we have even better. So here's to your good day's work. Idaho Central Credit Union. We believe money is a thing. It's not everything.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
Welcome back into PEC Match Point, brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. We talked about Valorant in this segment last week. It's inside the PEC. We're going to hear from some of the very talented casters who are calling the action, and we're going to take a look at everything you need to know about this Rocket League season. Of course, if you want more from the Power Esports Conference, head over to the official PEC website for everything you need, from power rankings and player profiles to predictions and analysis on the biggest matchups of the season. Stay informed, stay connected, and stay ahead with all things PEC at pec.leagueos.gg. As I said, we're getting into full swing. We're about a third way through the fall season, and what better time than to preview what to expect from Rocket League. I know we had some massive matchups this week. Cannot wait to hear what our guest casters are going to say. We're going to welcome in Nathan coming in from Utah, Connor from Baylor, and Gage from Nebraska. Welcome into the show, you guys. I'm so happy to have you. I expect this to be a lot of fun. This was a ton of fun last week in Valorant. And let's start with you, Gage. We've got 3 new schools coming into PEC Rocket League: Utah, Baylor, and Minnesota. Which of those 3 do you expect to make the most noise this season in Rocket League?
For me personally, I think I would go Baylor. Like, I think that might be probably, I don't know if that's a consensus choice. I don't know. But like Hoxer and Andy, that's a really exciting duo. And, former RLCS players. So I think that'd be really fun to watch. So that's my personal pick for the new school.
All right, let's throw it over now to Nathan. You kind of fit this one because you are part of that new regime that's coming in.
Yep.
You could be biased if you want, but Utah, Baylor, Minnesota, who do you think is going to make the most noise?
So, first instinct is to say Utah. I'm, from there, I'm supporting them, rooting for them. Biased answer, obviously. I mean, if we're looking at the pure statistical view, I think Baylor is going to make the biggest impact. But I still got to throw it to Utah and, just support Utah right there.
Well, Connor, he set it up for you. You're from Baylor. Are you going to stick with your home squad, or are you going to be humble as well?
I'm not going to be humble at all. I think that Baylor is the best team coming in. We got 2 professional players. Our third player is also extremely good. And really, based on what we've done already in practice in the current leagues, current games so far, we've been doing extremely well. And I don't think that it's going to slow down.
Now, this one I think might be a tough one for you guys because we kind of maybe had the game of the year, right? We had the national championship rematch this week with Boise State and Michigan State. But looking ahead on the rest of the schedule, we'll go back to you, Gage. What's your game of the year, that date? It's circle on your calendar that you think everybody's got to tune into in the fall semester.
I think, we haven't seen, I'm pretty sure Baylor and Boise State's coming up, right? That's, okay, yeah. I think that one's going to be the big test to see if, Baylor is really going to be that new powerhouse or really make a lot of noise in the PEC. So for me, that would be my number 1 pick.
Nathan, what do you think? You going to agree with him, or are you going to go somewhere else?
I'm going to go somewhere slightly different. I think my game of the year just has to be a Utah game.
Of course.
Those are the games I keep a special eye out for. And just based off, like I've got some connections to Boise State just with some family members and stuff, and so I think the Utah-Boise State game is my game of the year.
All right, and finally, let's go to you, Connor. What do you think? What's the game of the year? What should we watch?
I'm gonna have to agree with Gabe here. I really am looking forward to that Baylor Boise State game. I really want to show. Because I'm a Baylor fan. I work with Baylor. I obviously want to show the rest of the league that we're here to play, and I think that is a great proving grounds for us to do exactly that.
And so far, the Broncos are undefeated, so the first team to knock them off, that'll be a huge one. Now, this one's a bit tricky, right? Because we are kind of into the season, so you guys get a little bit of a cheat sheet here. Who's your player of the year, right? If this was a preseason, we call it the preseason MVP. Who would you say is that player at the end of the fall semester or even at the end of the year that you think should be that PEC Rocket League MVP, Gage?
Oh man. Right now I feel like just looking at the stats, like I'm a guy who's gonna look at numbers. I'm gonna go with Andy. I also think he's a really exciting player to watch. So even outside of the like player of the year, I guess he would be like my most anticipated player to look at every time I'm watching anything PEC related. So that would be my pick. Also, y'all need to be tuned in to Creed. Okay, that's maybe not so much the player of the year, but if anyone who's like in the champ to GC range and they're really wanting to rank up, that's a player to replicate right there. And I think everyone should watch this gameplay.
Nathan, what about you? Who's your MVP?
Unsurprisingly, I'm going with a super biased option here.
Oh my God!
I know. Who would have thought? It's got to be Hydro or Trey. Great guy. He's phenomenal at the game. Out of all of the players on our team, I actually interact with him the most. We ride motorcycles together a fair bit, and I'm throwing completely I'm ignoring statistics completely and just doing stuff of like who I like, who I know, and everything like that.
Nothing wrong with that, Connor. What about you? Where are you going to go? Rocket League PEC MVP for this year?
Yeah, it's really tough because I'm really close with all of my Baylor guys. I say the closest I'm probably with JT. Actually, definitely closest to JT because he's been at the school for a lot longer. We've known each other for the past 2 years, but I can't pick him. It's got to be, for me at least, Hoxer. I think that he's not necessarily the scorer like Andy is. He's more of a midfield presence, insane on defense, and can also just put in any shot into the net. And he's just an incredible player to watch. But for me, I'd be fine if it goes to anybody on Baylor.
And this one, it might play into your game of the year again. We got a long way to go. We got all fall. We got all spring. But, Gage, what is your national championship prediction? We're going to hold you to it. We're going to make fun. I'm just kidding. We're not going to make fun of you. But who do you got, Gage? National championship next spring.
I think it goes right in with the most anticipated game. I think it's Boise State and Baylor. I think Baylor's going to win it, though, if I'm being honest. I do like, Boise State they're proven, but I think there's just so much star power on Baylor, and I think they're just going to bring it home.
And Nathan, I'm going to love to see if you somehow spin Utah into this one.
Utah's a bit of a hard spin for this one. Just looking off rankings, we're 1-1 right now. However, we did beat number 3 Ohio State, which might be something there. So, if we can be Ohio State, maybe. We haven't played Boise or Baylor yet. But I think I've got to give it to Boise or Baylor just purely based off numbers right now, as much as I would love to say Utah.
Connor, what about you? You going to join that Boise-Baylor trend?
It's definitely, it's obviously like the obvious thing. I think Baylor, no matter who we play, I think we can beat them. So I'm always going to have us in the finals. But I think that Michigan State could upset Boise State. So it's either us against Boise or us against Michigan State in my head. But, it's always going to be Baylor in the finals when you're talking to me since I'm representing Baylor.
What happens if Baylor doesn't make it to the finals?
I would be shocked.
Oh, okay.
It could happen.
If it's not us in the finals, I would say it's going to be Michigan State or Boise State. I think those are the two most likely teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Scrims. Yeah. Based off scrims, those are the most likely teams. Syracuse is not necessarily like an outside shot. They're definitely still my top 4 is those 4 teams. So I would say it's possible for any of them to make the finals. I just really think that Baylor is going to be there.
And this is where you're going to put your name on the line. Gage, we'll start with you. Your bold prediction. I want bold, really
I'm
bold
ready.
here.
I'm ready. Okay. All right. So I haven't been too Nebraska heavy yet, but it's time to get a little delusional. So we're 0-3 right now, and looking at the schedule, I sincerely think that we can finish 500, 4-4. I think we'll have a good upset late in the season, maybe against Boise. I mean, I didn't watch the game, but numbers guy again. We took Baylor to 5. Okay, and 4. I mean, I think was it 4? I thought it was 3.
It was
3. I'm sorry. There was like a game issue, right?
It was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, that's 2 games, right? Or something like that. I think we're locked in to have a big turnaround this like second half of the season. I think we're gonna turn some heads.
I have a feeling I know what Nathan's prediction is going to be, but it's going to involve Utah in the national championship, isn't it, Nathan?
I wasn't going quite that far.
Okay.
I think we go undefeated besides the Baylor game the rest of until spring, and then spring we lose maybe 2 games.
Wow.
So.
But you're not going to put him in the national championship? Just put him in there at this point.
Utah in the national championship.
There we go. There we go. Who are they going to play? Who are they going to play, Baylor or Boise?
I think Baylor. Because
Okay.
I think the rest of the semester is going to be Baylor. I think we win the rest.
Okay, all right. And Connor, take us home. What's your bold prediction? And it's not bold to say Baylor wins, so you got to go somewhere else.
Yes, I know. I'm going to go with Baylor does not get forced to a Game 5 for the rest of the fall semester.
Whoa.
That is my bold
prediction.
That's a
crazy one.
Have they been in a Game 5 yet?
The worst result. We have not. No. But we still have the 3, in my opinion, the 3 games to look out for. Obviously, Boise State, Michigan State. I think Syracuse is also a team that can put up a fight. So I think all of those are going to be either 3-0s or 3-1s in Baylor's favor. And then I think that's for this fall semester. I don't think we're going to Game 5. Hoping my guys back me up.
I like that. Well, Gage, Connor, Nathan, I appreciate you guys joining PEC Match Point. I hope we can have you guys back on maybe later this semester, maybe in the spring. Take a look back, see if Utah has done as well as you think, or see if Baylor is the powerhouse it is. But again, Gage, Nathan, Connor, absolutely pleasure to have you guys. It has been an absolute blast. And PEC Rocket League should be an absolute blast, especially after that preview. There's games to watch. There's players to watch. I cannot wait to see how it's going to shake up. But the standings have taken form across the PEC. We're going to look ahead to Week 4. Where's our teams at? Where's the Baylors and the Utahs at in Rocket League and more? That's coming up on PEC Match Point.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
Welcome back into PEC Match Point, brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. A big shout out to Nathan Gage and Connor for joining us for that Inside the PEC. That's becoming my favorite segment, the hot takes, the banter. Again, curious to see if Utah does as well as Nathan wants. But we're done with Week 3. It's time to look ahead to Week 4 in the PEC, starting with Rocket League. Should be an interesting one. We've got the top teams starting to pull away. We'll see if the unbeatens can remain. As we start with Syracuse and Ohio State to kick things off, the Orange offense came alive last week, but they're trying to make up for that 0-2 start. Meanwhile, the Buckeyes, they're hoping to keep pace with Baylor and Boise State atop the standings, maybe be that number 3 squad. Kansas and Utah, they're both coming off disappointing sweeps last week. They're looking to find their strides in Week 4, and the winner of the match will find themselves right back in the thick of it at the top half of the standings. Nebraska and Minnesota square off. Both those teams looking for that first win in PEC Rocket League. The newcoming Gophers, they're hoping that bye was just what they needed to get back on track as they take on Nebraska. And the final Rocket League match, I swear we've said this every single week about Boise State, is is a massive one. It's a very anticipated matchup. We heard it on Inside the PEC, maybe game of the year to tune into for the fall semester. It's Boise State, who's undefeated, taking on 3-0 Baylor. Only one can remain. It's another heavyweight bout for the Broncos. Great chances for teams across the league to enter that midseason mark strong, as week 4 of PEC Rocket League is sure to not disappoint in any of the games you see. Now, as we go into Overwatch, there's a few big games on this one. Ohio State and Syracuse, they're going to clash. Syracuse had that early statement win over Boise State. Ohio State's putting up kills and scores that nobody could even dream of obtaining. That is a must-watch game for me. Kansas, they're quietly sitting at 2-0 as well. Everybody seemed to have forgotten about the Jayhawks. They're going to take on an 0-2 Utah squad that I think a lot of people expected to start off better. This could be a sneaky game, and for maybe Utah to get back on track. Nebraska, they're going to look for their first win. They take on that Minnesota squad, who, again, coming off the bye, should be a fun one there. And Boise State, it's been a tough start to the season. Started with a bye. Then they get the loss to Syracuse. Then they get another bye. They're going to look to get back on track as they're going to take on Baylor. And this is a big week for a couple of games. Must watch across the league. Definitely want to tune in for that. Valorant has some crazy big matchups here as well. Ohio State, again, we kind of heard a few weeks ago. It's sort of that Ohio State, Michigan State, and Boise State sort of top three. We'll see if Ohio State can continue to prove themselves. They take on a Syracuse team who's 0-3. They've looked better each and every week, but they just haven't been able to put things together consistently. Should be a fun one to watch. Kansas comes in at 2-1. They're going to take off a Utah squad that's 1-1. This has massive implications for that fourth spot that kind of everybody's fighting for here. Minnesota, as well as in that discussion, is the Gophers are going to take on Nebraska. Minnesota coming off that bye. They have high expectations. They cannot afford. This is a trap game. They cannot afford to miss this one up. And Boise State and Baylor will round things out. The Broncos come in at 2-0. The Bears are 1-2. Baylor has had some crazy high-scoring games as well in Valorant. We'll see if they're going to be able to put all those fireworks together and maybe knock off the Broncos. As this fall season in PEC Valorant shaping up to be a good one. Plenty of time for anybody to make a run, and this is as good a week as ever to start it. And finally, in Smash, we've got some massive matchups. I know I've said that a lot, but trust me, the PEC is loaded with content. Syracuse, they're coming off a bye. They're at 1-1. They're going to take on an Ohio State team that's 0-2, but nearly had an upset win over Nebraska and is starting to build some momentum. Nebraska, they're 3-0. They're atop the standings. They're going to take on a Minnesota team that maybe some have said haven't played as many high-quality squads. This could be a first big test for Minnesota. And the finale of the week will pair a team of schools hoping to turn things around. Boise State comes in at 0-2. Baylor's 0-3. Baylor nearly forced a game through. We saw that earlier against Kansas. It came down to a tiebreaker match. So this could be a massive game. Again, you do not want to see those losses start to add up. So again, cannot wait to see what happens in Smash. Week 4 of the PEC is set to have massive matchups across the board. Syracuse and Ohio State, keep your eye on the Overwatch match. This is going to be a must-win series for both teams. Kansas and Utah, they have a Valorant matchup that is going to be full of action. These teams are dropping eliminations left and right. Make sure you tune into that. Nebraska and Minnesota, this is the Smash game to watch of the week. These are the top two teams. You must tune into this. And then Boise State and Baylor, we heard it on in the show in Inside the PEC. The Rocket League squads for both these teams are both undefeated. That should be an epic series. We got massive matchups across the board. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in week 4 of the PEC. It's shaping up to be as exciting as always. Again, if you want to check out anything, you want to see Carson's power rankings, you want to see the scores in the schedule, head over to pec.leagueos.gg for everything you need to know about the Power Esports Conference. PEC Match Point brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. It's been a massive week. Good luck to everybody in your games. I cannot wait to join everybody, wrap up week 4, and see where we're at as we hit the halfway point of the fall semester. We'll take a break. We'll be back next week with PEC Match Point.